So in this video we're going to be going over Chainkiller with Perfect Headhunter versus pretty much any other brand set you may or may not like with Headhunter. Before we get too far into this, there are two things I need to address. One being Ninja by Backpack. This bag is now, since we have a calculator and we can actually calculate it to within less than 1% accuracy. Like, we're very damn accurate with it now. Ninja by Backpack is literally the worst thing you can do to a Headhunter build. Simply just because your total max scaling is going to take effect from your weapon damage, but more importantly, your total weapon damage. Which means that technically speaking, if you're running a Headhunter build, you want Vigilance, Concussion, Unstoppable Force, anything that will give you total weapon damage. The only reason not to run one of these would be if you're running Tip of the Spear for the Tip of the Spear backpack, if you so wish, just because TAC 50 don't give no fuck. The second one being, essentially here we're comparing tonnage in a nuclear warhead. It's mostly redundant. Sure, we'd all prefer the 50 megaton nuclear warhead, but if you get hit by a 30 megaton nuclear warhead, you're still going to be Rice Krispies real fucking quick the exact same way. So, kind of in a nutshell, this video is kind of pointless, because effectively we're going to be talking on an MMR build, what's better, a Rowdy Headhunter or Chainkiller. Like, it doesn't matter. It mostly really doesn't. We're literally comparing the difference between 21.1 mil and 21.5 mil. That is essentially what it is you're kind of doing. It's like 21 mil is going to one-shot pretty much everything in the game anyway. So what difference does that extra 400k actually make? Well, as a few people rightly pointed out in the video where I went over the math of Headhunter, unless you really want to get into it and really want to know, most of this is actually immaterial. What really matters is, before Headhunter stacks, can you kill something with your first shot? Putting aside the accuracy and player skill, I'm talking just, do you have enough damage to get that first shot kill? So, the first thing we actually need to do is compare the maximum output, because that's really going to determine how effective overall it's going to be, because if you have to crack a chunga on heroic, legendary, in raids, etc, etc, this is basically the only part where the max damage is really going to actually make a difference. So on the build that I am running here, my maximum damage at max stacks with the build I have at full buff utilising True Patriot, I will do 21.1 million. If I swap Chainkiller to a Rowdy, I will do 21.5 million. If you want to understand what these spreadsheet equations mean, there's a link in the description for the How Headhunter Really Works video, which if you haven't watched, I would suggest pausing this, watching that one, and then coming back to this. But despite the fact that a Rowdy will give essentially 400,000 more damage, this is literally only a 2% increase. 2.04 to be precise. It is not that big of a deal either way. And obviously we can run Chainkiller and then put on a Rowdy backpack or a Rowdy mask or a Rowdy gloves or something. There are other areas where we can put them. It's one of the main reasons why I'm testing it on this build, because it simply is 4-piece Tip of the Spear, Chainkiller, and I'm running Dodge City Holster. So we're directly comparing Chainkiller versus a Rowdy, or essentially DH with Headhunter. DH will be slightly different, because where a Rowdy gives 10% MMR damage, DH gives 20% pistol damage. Now, the next thing to remember is our damage with stacks cannot exceed the number that was just on screen. So Chainkiller cannot exceed 21.1 million on this build specifically, and a Rowdy Headhunter cannot exceed 21.5 million on this build specifically. So this is Chainkiller. We're going to look at head no crit specifically, and we have to remember as well that the first one is no stacks, second one of the 13.9 is 1 stack, and then the 22.2 is full stack. However, this is over our cap, which is denoted on the left hand side, the 21.1 million. Now obviously these are nothing to scoff at, but if we just transfer this over now to an Araudi headhunter, we get 5.6 million for our initial shot. One stack is 12.7, two stack is 19.8, but we have a cap of 21.5, which means we have to now get that second stack. Essentially, with Chainkiller, you can be at maximum capacity with maximum output on 3 shots, whereas a Rowdy Headhunter is going to take 4. This is going to be the biggest difference between all of them, and it is just simply because the first stack of Chainkiller allows you to get a higher output on that first stack. So here we have is the left hand side, that is Chainkiller, the right hand side is a Rowdy with Headhunter. Hopefully we can see that the first head no crit, Chainkiller has 5.5 mil, whereas a Rowdy Headhunter has 5.6 mil. So that first shot, a Rowdy is going to do more. Again though, this is literally a difference of about 2%. It's actually rather comical. It doesn't really matter. For the first stack, Chainkiller is going to do 13.9, where a Rowdy is going to do 12.7. This is a difference of 8% in favour of Chainkiller. So you can kind of read into this what you will, but the difference here is mostly negligible, simply just because solo heroic, even elites only have about 9.8 million health. So after one stack, regardless, you're still going to kill things. It's only going to matter here depending on what it is you're actually shooting, such as a named, a chunga, etc, etc. For the third stack, as we already discussed, Chainkiller is already overstack. It's at 22 mil apparently, but we can't go above 21.1. However, a Rowdy is at 19.8, which means we still have enough room to get one more stack in to put us to our cap of 21.5. The difference here, like I said, is completely negligible. Like, there's not going to be a difference overall, especially considering most builds you would run probably Chainkiller and then put like a Rowdy backpack on, so you're going to get the best of both worlds. I would argue personally that getting 2 into this is 1, mostly going to be null and void, but 2, if you really wanted to pick a side, it is mostly going to be dependent on your overall build. On something like the Headhunter builds I play, I use a White Death, a Nemesis, and then attack 50. I have 3 MMRs essentially. So in this regard, a Rowdy would be the best bet. However, on my Headhunter's Fury build, where I run shotgun, an MMR, and a pistol, Chainkiller is going to be the best bet, simply just because no matter what weapon I have out, I'm still going to get the 5% weapon damage from it being a Walker and Harris piece. If I went D&H, I'd only get 20% for my pistol, but if I want to use my shotgun, or if I'm pinned down and need to use my MMR, I'm getting nothing. So here, Chainkiller is going to be the better option. It really is going to depend on what your overall build is and how you personally wish to use it. My personal largest argument for Chainkiller over the others is just quite simply, yes, it is a named, it's going to be slightly more difficult to farm. However, you're limiting your RNG. You're always going to get a red core. You're always going to get their Headhunter talent. So the only thing now that actually has any RNG involved is the 2 minor attributes. And technically, you only need one of them to be correct, depending on how exactly it is you want to build. Essentially, you are just looking for a Chainkiller with a headshot damage roll. You can change the other one, or you can deal with weapon handling and just put headshot on. Whereas if you were going to go for a Rowdy, you need to get one with either handling and headshot, and then put Chainkiller on, or Chainkiller and headshot. I personally will just argue Chainkiller simply just because of the ease of use and how quickly you can potentially find it and put it into your build. It is also still going to be very, very powerful simply just because you are comparing the tonnage of a nuke. You are still going to be killing things very, very quickly depending on how it is you have your MMR build set up. Hopefully this kind of answers any questions you might have about this. However, at the same time, like I said at the start of the video, this video was kind of mostly pointless. We're literally comparing a difference of 2%. That's literally it. This will go up to 5% if you are comparing D and H to Chainkiller, simply just because it has a larger stat. It's 20% pistol damage, but it just means you go from a 2% difference to a 5% difference. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. Hopefully, like I said, it answers a few questions, but if not, sorry. Have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.